Great Chat is brought to you by Mercury, radically different banking loved by over 300,000 entrepreneurs. We use Mercury to run this podcast and love recommending it to other founders and fund managers. It's free to get started, so try it for yourself. Visit mercury.com to learn more and apply online in minutes.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Woo, year 2, Great Chat.
Ashley, you're glowing. You look
I'm
great.
glowing. Oh my goodness. Well, it's my ring light.
Do you have new skincare routine? Oh, is the ring light new?
Somebody tell me about these fucking Chinese peptides. I had a friend lose a fuck ton of weight on them, and I'm really confused. And we said we were going to talk about them, and now we're talking about Ashley's skin. I don't want to talk about it.
It's not peptides.
It's peptides,
It's
obviously.
beautiful.
It's not peptides.
Ashley's
Okay,
not
tell
on
me about
Chinese
them.
peptides.
What are peptides? I want to learn about this
I'm
shit.
too afraid. I think Angela's going to be our expert here. I don't do anything.
Okay, can we start off with explain like I'm 5? Like, all I've heard is that my friends are injecting themselves with stuff that they got from I don't know, Alibaba. Like, I'm confused. How do you get them? What are they? Are they all weight loss? Or are there ones that make your skin better? Because you've got my attention. I want my skin to be better.
Okay, but I am no expert, but it's not limited to weight loss, but you know how everyone here is crazed about GLP-1s. Peptides take us to GLP-3s, which is instead of just acting on one dimension, it acts on 3 dimensions, which makes
Wait, did you just make that up?
No.
Oh, okay.
Vitruvian. I don't know what it's Vitruvian. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but whatever. It starts with an R. I think it's something like Vitruvian. It's basically GLP-3. It's supposed to help you lose weight very, very quickly. There's also peptides. I think it's oxytocin, which is not to be confused with oxycodone, but oxytocin is a peptide that in some of the autistic communities, particularly in SF, people are taking because it's supposed to help you make eye contact and be more sociable because it triggers the same, oxytocin is a happy hormone and that I guess makes it's like what is released when a mom hugs her baby. And so if you give yourself that peptide, it's supposed to help socially awkward people then, look people in the eye and carry on conversations. And so yes, it extends beyond weight loss.
Wow, a peptide for every ailment.
Okay, so Mac's question of how do you get it is a good one.
Oh, it's Signal chats, Telegram chats, Facebook groups, but basically they're all
Okay, so it's sort of like ordering an ID in college, allegedly. I did not do this, but
all manufactured in China, and they can't actually sell it here for commercial purposes, which is why everything is for research use. So you can ship it to a university for them to do research on. So that's why you're buying everything for research use. So this is actually an opportunity for Great Chat Enterprises, which is to create back to season 1 topic of reviews, but to create a website that reviews different dealers and how credible their supply is and the effectiveness.
Oh, I thought that you were going to create a research.
I know, I was Great Chat Labs. It sounds great.
Brexit, I go start a university as part of Great Chat Labs.
Totally.
But isn't most of that on Reddit? I feel like I have seen it on Reddit, people reviewing the different types of.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm sure that they're better than we would do, honestly. The people on Reddit are going, we're great. I love us. We're fantastic. Big fans of Great Chat. Huge. But the Reddit community, dear Reddit community, this is my platform. I appreciate you. I see everything you've done. Thank you for your in-depth reviews. To a level that is occasionally alarming. You pay attention to so many small details and it's a beautiful thing. It couldn't be me is what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. Did you guys see the Kanye West pseudo apology statement where he says that he's been spending a lot of time on Reddit and sees different points of view or something?
Oh my gosh, Reddit bringing world peace.
I texted my friend who runs comms at Reddit. I was like, "Are you leaning into this moment?" And she's like, discussed,
no,
but absolutely not.
Obviously not.
Yeah. He also says that he's mentally unstable. Yeah.
I will say I'm so here for this is we didn't decide to talk about this at all, but I do think that there's something I don't necessarily buy into the way that people talk about cancel culture, but I do think that there's something where we as a society have become less and less open to a redemption arc or to people learning and growing. And if Kanye really is moving away from his anti-Semitic views, if he really is opening up and realizing that there's some stuff that he really fucked up on and that he really hurt some people and he's looking and making amends, I think that's good for society. I think that's good for
Totally.
him. I think that's good for his kids. I think that's good for his family. Like, hell yeah. I haven't paid attention at all, so I have no idea if
Mac,
that's the case. But if
it's a trend. Like, I think the apology post is back. And Kanye separate from this, but the Epstein files may have
Someone
made,
please fill me in on
anyone listening knows that a bunch more files from like the Epstein case were dropped, and so they're all being screenshot and posted on Twitter, and there are a lot of tech people in there as well as a lot of other people. And one of the sort of reputational casualties is Peter Attia, who's like a longevity guru, one of the OG longevity gurus. He wrote a book called Outlive. He's sort of the personal concierge doctor to a lot of really fancy people. And some of his email exchanges with Jeffrey Epstein were exposed, and they did not look great. I mean, probably none of the exchanges look great. And so he took the time to write, one of us shared this in the group chat, Helen, I think it might have been you, like a long sort of a long tweet explaining some of the context, both explaining some of the context behind the emails, because a lot of these are without context. Like there was one where the subject line was fresh shipment, which given the overall tenor of the Epstein files made people's imaginations run wild. But, Peter Attia clarified that actually it was a fresh shipment of metformin that he had gotten in, which was sort of like the spiritual precursor to GLP-1s. Peptides. Everything goes back to peptides. And then trying to explain some other like weird quotes he had in there, while also, I think, like apologizing and taking some responsibility. So anyways, that was sort of, in my mind, the apology posts are back. It turns out there is a line, and that line is like Epstein files, or like in Kanye's case, like Nazism. So 2026, we're finding the lines.
No, I was going to say, like, we've been searching for the line to founder mode because Peter Attia is a quasi-founder sort, and we thought it was corporate espionage, but it was not corporate espionage. But there is a line, and it has been found.
I mean, we're only a month into 2026, but I feel like, some of these things feel so different because, yes, last year, I really, really feel like it's characterized by us searching for a line or wondering if one exists at all. Like, I think one of our first episodes was literally called, Does Anyone Care About Bad Behavior Anymore? Right? And now, like, our first episode of the year is talking kind of about this, but in a slightly different environment. Yeah. So we'll see.
Contrition is back in, guys. Love trends.
But also, are the Epstein conversations happening anywhere other than X? As someone who like doesn't live on X, I feel like I actually just don't see that much.
I'm sure Reddit, our aforementioned friends on Reddit, must be going so deep, because a lot of these documents have, words blocked out or like don't show a sender. And so like the rabbit holing people must be doing in certain corners, I'm sure is quite extreme. Speaking of Reddit, there's the Reddit for humans, but now there's the Reddit for agents, for bots with Moltbook. I don't know who here.
And all of this happened in this 72-hour period, which is like, there were so many memes. Like if you were, you're traveling or you have no context and you log on to whatever platform of choice, it really feels like you missed a really big chunk of things that had happened.
It was funny because I sent, when Moltbook started to explode, which is like the Reddit for agents, I sent it to a bunch of people, but they hadn't even heard of Clawdbot, which is the new
my God.
Like on-device agents. I was like, oh my gosh, well, we have to go back 3 days when this launched. And so,
God, people, keep up.
It does feel right now like if you're off Twitter for like a day, the amount of catching up you have to do is insane.
But I think it's okay. I mean, just to go back to the point we made earlier, like, I think if you miss it, like, it's okay. And we're just we're just, growing farther apart of people who are extremely aware of every little thing that is happening with AI and, the ecosystem, and then people just live in their lives.
I think there's another category too, because I feel extremely aware, but I'm not throwing myself head first, and I'm not tinkering, right? Like I haven't bought a Mac Mini and set up a Clawdbot, now a Moltbot. And I'm telling myself it's because of the very real security concerns that plenty of people have already unveiled. But I also do think there is this kind of growing divide between, the people who are like hands-on with these tools very, very early, and the people who are super interested and are watching, but maybe want to see how things play out a little bit more. And so this feels like one of the starkest in my mind. This kind of feels like the new FOMO, the new 996. Everyone was like performing hustle culture, and now there's like the theater of vibe coding. And if you're not vibe coding all the time, if you don't have a Mac Mini running your Moltbot 24/7, like, are you even in tech? That's how it feels to me.
I mean, this sounds exactly like when people were mining their crypto at home.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Mac, good comparison.
Like, my thing is, has there ever been, and this might be a first, maybe it is really true, but has there ever really truly been a point in time where, like, if you didn't keep up with all the day-to-day stuff, you were like significantly and profoundly economically disadvantaged on a long-term scale from those who did? Like, I just don't know that there is like a comparison that would justify the need to keep up. Like, I think the need to generally be like aware of and curious about these tools is probably like a smart move. But I also think that, like, to your point about it being the new 996, I think like it would be like historically unprecedented for there to truly be something where it's like, if you don't keep up with all the like random details.
I think the thing with the Clawdbot/Moltbot is people are giving it full access to like their email, their chats, like all of their systems. And then now the concern is with Moltbook, this like sort of agent-only destination, like you could have prompt injections, like hidden prompt injections, like in that text, and that could create new like security vulnerabilities.
Isn't it kind of insane that we live in a universe right now where we think that there should be a higher standard for security for our email than there is for Social Security? Like, we have higher expectations. Not that it should be, but that like practically speaking, we're like, yeah, my Social Security number got stolen last week, but like, don't you dare touch my Gmail.
What is even the point of a Social Security number at this point? Like, it's, I don't know. I think we need to rethink
red tape.
I'm not the right person to pontificate on this, but like, we just need completely new foundations for security.
So
it's crazy.
To be honest, I'm not sure that I'm not already living in a simulation. Like, I think that all of my stuff has already been stolen, and the Chase app I'm having is not the actual Chase app, but like my hackers spoofing a Chase app. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like at this point my identity has been so fully stolen. I'm already living in a simulation of my identity.
That's great.
Like, 100%.
That's like
simulation Angela. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Mac.
I was just gonna say, like, if you ever want to escape the Matrix, speaking of actually
GLP-3s and peptides.
Exactly,
That's
we
how
can throw
you
some
escape the
peptides
Matrix,
at it. Also, speaking of escaping the Matrix, do we want to talk about Brexit? Is that a thing that we want to talk about?
I think we should talk about Brexit. I think I'm like the only person in this.
Look at her moving shit along
in this chat who has no stake.
No stake in Brexit.
I have zero
I think that you're the only
no,
one
but
whose
Helen,
opinion
you're like a
counts in
fintech investor, and
Yeah,
this is good. This
I
is
have-
like
I have hot
fintech is
takes,
back.
but I have
So
She
I have
came
a
close
no.
to her own acquisition back in the day, and then got hit by Lena Khan.
Fine.
Oh,
It's
man.
fine.
You got conned.
Yeah, I think it was a good outcome. I don't think that they were profitable yet. I think they were marching towards profitability, but I think this was a good outcome for everyone. Go Mac, early Brex employee. Except for people who invested, I think, at the peak.
This
peak.
podcast is sponsored by Mercury.
I use Brex. Brex is fine. Yes, Brex is great. And
Resounding endorsement.
totes. I feel like it's okay. Ashley said I'm a
That
fintech
right
person.
there is the best
You
Mercury
gotta
ad
you
I've
gotta
ever
use
seen.
everything. You gotta use everything. You gotta try everything. It's healthy. It's good for the ecosystem.
That's what people say about finances. They say try everything.
Especially post SVB bank run. You gotta keep $10 in like 52 accounts. So I think Ashley asked a question, which is like, does this mean fintech is back? And I had a
I was
take,
teeing
which
you
was,
up, Helen.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't I think it's the start of fintech being back, but I think that we need like still a lot more events. It could be M&A, it could be they could be actual IPOs, they could be it could look a lot of different ways, but I still think that fintech is not.
Do you mean from like a belief standpoint, like from like where capital and talent wants to
ask
go?
anyone. Yeah, exactly. So I think that, like, personally, I think we're like 1% of the opportunity, and I think a lot of fintech people would tell you the same. The market is just so big. Like, these banks, like they have all the power in the world, and they need to be disrupted. Yeah. But I think that, especially if we live in the Valley, it's where talent is currency, and it's really hard to convince a great software engineer to go work at a fintech company right now. And there haven't been big exits. It's not where talent is concentrating, unfortunately. And, their opportunity cost of working at an AI company that gets, coverage and gets talked about on Twitter and all of these things that their friends know about. So I don't think we're back in that sense. I think that New York probably, like, fintech is pretty strong there. I think the ecosystem, we still see a lot of smart people tinkering around there and working at those companies. So I think I'm mostly speaking of the Valley.
Yeah, I think Ramp is an interesting counterpoint in that it has had in the private markets, a pretty significant trajectory after like a slight step back, I guess, maybe a couple years ago. And I think just like culturally, there's like a lot of sort of admiration for and excitement about Ramp. So I think they're kind of like, maybe if Ramp does well, that's the tipping point for fintech. But also it was interesting. I mean, the most interesting thing to me as someone who has like no dog in this fight, except for lots of love for Mercury, our sponsor, following the announcement of a $5 billion exit that's going to be great for early employees, a lot of investors, there was a lot of sort of backlash and hate around it. And I think that was mostly on Twitter. I don't know what that looked like on like LinkedIn or if Threads was even aware. But
all of the backlash or criticism was really around a single point, which I think that it's a horrible point, which is comparing it to the peak valuation, which I want to remind these people that was a moment in time that will never be back. It's like comparing us today to that market that we're not going to return to. I just feel like that's been like the.
Some would say we've returned in parts of the tech industry.
In AI world, 100%. But I think just overall, like, yeah, I didn't think that was a strong argument, and I think most criticism was around that.
I hear what you're saying, but also, like, I'm looking at you, Angela, and I'm just like, so how do you feel about it? Like, I mean, no, not actually. I'm not actually asking you that. I'm not asking you, like, please don't say anything. Like, I get that you can't. But, like, I hear you. And also, for the people who did put in, like, $100 million. I'm not saying that that's the number. That's whatever. But I'm just saying, like, for the people who did invest at these like growth stages in this ZERP era, I think it's okay to be like, yeah, I'm fucking pissed that money went down the toilet. Like, that is everyone's retirement funds. And it is sort of like, but I don't think that it's as much of a criticism on, to me, it doesn't really seem like it does. I agree with you on the point that, like, it seems kind of unfair to be like, oh, look at $7 billion of destroyed market cap. I think it's like, okay, also, like, that market cap came from an era of like insane exuberance that, like, we should also hold like the folks who were allocating money a little bit accountable for the decisions that were made in that point in time. Like,
I think this was also used as an example, and it's an interesting one of like, don't over-index on first mover advantage. And a lot of this came from the Ramp camp, right? Like, Brex was earlier out of the gate, like had raised at pretty high valuations when Ramp was just getting started. And so I actually think a lot of the negative sentiment around the Brexit was actually just people who are fans of Ramp who wanted to like twist the knife a little bit and like
coordinated.
It was coordinated. Of course it was. All those like group chats, like it was 100% coordinated. But I didn't.
Hey, it was well executed. Like, as a PR campaign, it was like decently done.
I think there was a little bit of backlash there. I also refuse to use the name Ramp. I call them Brex of the East. Like,
Helen, I think
guess
you
they're
are the
kind of
only one who does that.
I worked at Brexit. I don't call them Brex of the East, but I love you riding for us like that.
Tell me the difference. Tell me the difference, other than that their HQ is in New York and
they're significantly better at marketing.
Well,
I'm really proud of Brex. I'm really proud of the team. I'm such a huge fan. And I want that for all the other fintechs too, because we need better financial infrastructure in this country. And I'm really on board. So go Brex, go Ramp, go Mercury, go crush it, guys. Like I am.
Yeah. And if Plaid could IPO soon, that would be really great.
I'm pro Plaid too. Fuck that Plaid. Please IPO. Make Helen rich. I appreciate that.
When you guys were asking Mac about Brexit, I thought you were moving to London, Mac, but now I understand the context of what Brexit
it's a Brex exit.
Have you ever, Angela, of your friends, how would you rate me in the patriotism scale? Do you see me moving to London?
I was going to say.
I'm probably one of your more Merca friends.
Reshore manufacturing in Europe. That's what you're going to help them do.
The face. The face is good.
You know what? Hell yeah, Europe. Go get 'em, Tiger. I want that for you. I unfortunately will not be building it for you, but I am rooting for you, Europe. Go off.
I was talking to somebody and they were saying that during the heat of all of the potential tariffs and sanctions against Europe for Greenland before that kind of settled down, I was talking to someone who was consulting with the German government and they were like, well, we run on Microsoft and if we're a sanctioned country, then Microsoft can't provide services to us. So literally the government would stop functioning. And it's interesting. It's driven this whole pro-sovereignty, we need to sponsor European companies. And so I'm curious to see over a longer arc of time what that means, not just in AI, but sort of across everything, given where the world is moving.
Let's talk about building in public. Ashley asked a really good question. I believe it was Ashley. Helen, was it you?
It might have been Helen, but I think we've both been thinking about it.
Our two resident early stage VCs are thinking very deeply about, do companies build in public anymore? Is it dead? Is it real? Did it ever actually work?
That's a great question, because somebody asked, can anyone name a company that is really successful that builds in public? And it was
builds or built?
Yeah.
Because there was also an era of build in public and open source. For God's sake, do you guys remember
not
when we did
literal
everything off of Twitter's?
Yes, not that. Build in public meaning you're taking your audience with you and you're showing them basically how you're doing everything. I think there are a lot of emerging managers who build in public, right? They're building their firms. They do a lot of TikTok videos of how they're fundraising and how they're setting things up. And it's educational. And I think the intent is very cool. I feel like it really started to take off around COVID, where we're all starved for content and people are, they're experimenting a lot more with sharing content on the internet. So we saw a lot of build in public for startups and funds and things like that during that period. And then it felt like last year it took another turn where it was build in public, but also plus Gen AI took it to this really performative. Everyone has a launch video for every little feature that you're, launching, or every startup that has 0 customers and barely a product was doing these incredibly, giant, these big production videos that felt so outsized for where they were. And it felt like things were just continuing to go in that direction. And it was sort of well, what's the top? And it feels like, and this is the discussion we had in the group chat, that all of a sudden came to a stop, with the exception of it's still normal to announce what valuation your last round was. That is still going for some reason. But otherwise it feels kind of oh, people are pulling back a little bit. It feels like maybe we did hit a peak. And now we're curious, well, what does it look like now? What does maybe building in private, what does that look like?
I think we hit a level of noise that was just unsustainable and kind of made everyone's the N+1 effort less and less successful, right? Because everyone is promoting what they're doing all the time. There was so much success theater. I think that was kind of thrilling for a little while, right? Last year was a year we saw records break in terms of, a million to 100 million ARR and 500 million ARR. And it was just like, I think it was like kind of intoxicating and exciting for the industry overall. And then like everything becomes old at some point. I feel like even the valuation announcements are starting to, if for the people on the cap table, for the employees, that's always going to be exciting. But I think we just have to have like a bit of a higher bar, and probably part of hitting that higher bar for a lot of companies means pulling back a little bit and bringing a little bit more polish to how you show up in in the public sphere, and a little bit more thought to your narrative than, I can't even think of how many times over the past year I've seen like some announcement about a fundraise or revenue, and I have to click like 5 times to figure out what the company does, right? Like it got a little bit crazy, where growth was like the only story and numbers were the only story. And so I'm excited for this year. I think we're going to see a little bit more of a multifaceted approach. And I think we're also going to see startups figuring out how to like play to their strengths versus just following this like universal playbook that made everyone feel like they had to be on Twitter, on LinkedIn, like posting like all the time, or they didn't exist.
I think that we discovered last year that these companies could in a year scale from 0 to 100 to 200 million ARR, and that was very exciting. But now companies are realizing if I can go from 0 to 200 in 1 year, I can also go from 200 to 0 in 1 year. And we've also just reached that point for businesses where they're past that acceleration, that no longer, they realize it's a double-edged sword to lean just on that, because people are past the experimentation phase and people have appreciated that these businesses are a lot more fragile than they would otherwise suggest in that initial curve. So I think that also plays into it.
I was going to say, I think that generally speaking, it's reflective of the level of maturity of the industry. So like similar to Angela's point, but slight differentiation is that like we went through the phase where everything was hype, and not only are people exhausted by it, people are also like emotionally, in terms of the storytelling and the narrative, there's also this piece also where like as like concrete investors and folks who are actually like, have made bets on some of these things are expecting like additional maturity of operations, additional repeatability, additional scale, all of these like real outputs. And so the strategies that will get you from 0 to 100 million in a year won't get you from 100 million to a billion in 2 or 3, or, sick if you can do that in a year. Not only is it fragile, it's also just like a level of, as you grow up as a company, you have to start acting a little bit differently, because you run into things like you run into just essentially all the standard risks and regulations, risk profiles. Like if you say something the wrong way, like when you're 2 dudes in a laptop, you're probably, nobody's going to come after you. But if you have raised a couple 100 million, it starts to matter a lot more, because you're impacting a bunch of other people. So I think what we're seeing is just the industry growing up, and it's impacting beyond the AI industry, just growing up a little bit and maturing, and it's impacting beyond that. Because AI is so at the center of like the Silicon Valley culture right now, it's impacting everything beyond it too.
My 2 biggest concerns, I said this several times during the height of like performative sort of 996 and building in public and tweeting every 5 minutes of the day, was that, one, I think there are a lot of more like classic introverted founders who see that and they're like, whoa, if that's what it takes to be a founder, if that's what it takes to be a venture-backed founder these days, I don't know if I have it in me. And are we missing out on like a generation of like, people who are like, I don't know if that's my vibe? Because when I think back to, in my day, founders, when I think back to like all the founders I've worked for, like they would have been totally repelled by any of that. And the second thing is, I think that the performative stuff and like it was such a mismatch for early stage startups in particular, because gosh, like the early stage journey is so messy. It's like, revolving door of co-founders. It's like pivoting 100 times. It's, like just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And to show that is, I think, cool in some ways, right? It's vulnerable. It's democratizing the sort of, knowledge of the process, but also like you have real customers who are like forming their idea of you as a brand and as a company, and like you kind of only get a couple chances to do that. So I think I was a little bit like conservative, like, ooh, when they finally do figure it out, right? Like, will everybody go with them? And that's just hard. I think of it like a dragon, where you're taking your, very rapidly growing following with you with every little decision. And I feel like Cluey is a great example of this, where they exploded overnight, right? And they got a ton of attention, and we were captive, like watching every move, and it's exhausting. And then actually, I don't know what they do, and maybe they've got more tricks up their sleeves. I wouldn't count them out, but it's like, yeah, it's unclear.
I also wonder how much, just to tie it back to something we were talking about earlier, like tech just feels overall very overexposed to me right now, and the way that a lot of prominent people have showed up in the Epstein files, like, and are now being very, very quiet, people who are normally quite loud. And so I feel like those things have ripple effects, and people are maybe like, oh, maybe there are downsides to being like super visible all the time and being like a main character on these websites every day.
Well, Ashley, do you think, to do another callback to like early last year, do you think any of these figures will just post through it? Will they Huberman in it?
Some are. I'm not going to name all the names.
Some are. Okay.
And some have gone very, very silent, and or like made their accounts private or whatever. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think one thing that happened last year that I don't know, have a good gauge on for 2026. It felt like every news cycle was like 30 minutes last year because so much was happening. And so this is such a big moment and such a complex web of like some really, really terrible behavior. And then also just a glimpse into how a lot of powerful people communicate and get things done. I don't know how much staying power this has in terms of people's attention. Like, will the people who are laying low this week feel like, by Friday they can just go about their business? It's very unclear to me. But anyways, I think overall the lesson is just maybe it's okay to not be like online all the time. Maybe there are benefits to being less of a public figure, and I think being able to focus on actually building your business. And I'm excited too, because I've always, for some founders, whatever we want to call it, building in public, going direct, like, is a superpower. And for some companies, it can be a really incredible lever. And Helen, to your point earlier about like startups selling into other startups, like building in public might make a lot of sense if all of your customers are on these platforms. But I think it was just when everyone felt like they had to do it, the quality went down, the noise went up. And so we're gonna see more divergence in creativity this year, I think.
All right. There you have it.
Woo!
Building in public is over.
Or it's no longer an industry-wide mandate. How about that?
Until the oxytocin peptides work on all the founders and everyone becomes super sociable again.
Oh yeah, but they'll want to be offline.
Exactly. It's when the oxytocin stops working and the only eye contact they can make is with themselves in their front camera. Then we'll have a lot of TikTok stars.
I'm not ready for that era. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Great Chat. Have questions for us? Make sure to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. See you next week.